Eclipse activation, we're going to talk about in this video. We're going to talk about the sign of Aquarius and transits to that sign, when it might free up. We're going to talk about using electional astrology for social media posts. And then we will also talk about one other topic that escapes me. But these are all topics that are derived from questions that I've been asked. So this is a Q&A video, a Q&A episode. Ask SJ, you might say, Q&A. And let's just dive in. The major thing I wanted to share is just sometimes I get questions. I get tons of questions on social media, and whether it's DMs or in comments on my YouTube or comments on Twitter, a lot of these questions are not easily answered. You know, I'll get questions. It's like, what's the meaning of life? And there's no way to, this is of course facetious, but there's no way to answer. It takes like a sometimes book length treatment. And so in this video, I've gathered a few of these questions and then decided to answer them with just a treatment here in a video where it's a talking answer, because that way I can handle the complexity of the topics in more detail. So let's just move forward. I'm going to start with this first question. This was from Del Torre 10 days ago or so in one of the comments to one of my YouTube videos. Del is asking about, as eclipses seem to burn themselves into a degree for up to 6 months, would you consider the transiting applications of Mars and Saturn to this degree as activation points? And if so, would this be any form of scrutiny or only conjoining the degree bodily? So let me first answer that, Del. I'm not someone who is into this whole single eclipse degree as how I consider the story that the nodal transits and the eclipses, the story that those bring into our lives. To me, it's not the correct way to map their activations by only looking at that degree and when things trigger that degree through aspect. I actually go a completely different way, which is the sign-based transit of the nodes through the sign of the eclipse or the eclipse cycle themselves in that sign. That's what I'm most interested in, as peaks, as timing the beginning, middle, and end of the story, and then as peaks of activation. And I've got some chart examples I'll show you in a second. So my first answer is I'm not someone about this here into this idea of burning into a single degree. Degrees are part of collections of degrees that then are connected through affinities and connected through shared definitions. So the signs contain 30 degrees. And that's what I'm most interested in as a primary concern astrologically, is that major 30-degree division, and then the rulership scheme that is connected to those 30 degrees. They're connected through affinity of sign relationships. So, okay, let me, that's a whole nother theory, and that's a whole nother video to break down sign-based theory versus degree-based theory. But if I had to talk about activation, I will say I'm interested in the movements through the signs of the eclipses as the major activation of those eclipse stories. 1 or 2 movements for the angular signs, so the signs of the same modality as the next style of activation, because those transits through those angular signs are transiting and conjoining the north bending or the south bending, depending on where they are. That is to say, it's square or angular to the eclipse main axis of the eclipse. And so I would just say, that's how I look at the aspects. It's the hard aspects, as we say: conjunction, opposition, or square, transits to the eclipse sign or to the nodes. Those transits are what I'm interested in as activation. And then you ask us another really interesting question here about how there was a planet in Taurus, I guess I'm thinking here, but basically planets in the sign of the eclipse. And my answer here is yes, yes, yes. If a planet is in the sign of an eclipse, those eclipses impact that planet directly, and therefore directly impact what that planet is assigned in the natal chart. So for example, you have you're saying here that the Mercury was in Taurus in your chart, and then do these eclipses affect the 9th and 12th house? And absolutely, 9th and 12th house themes are part of your Mercury eclipse story. And that is to say, eclipses on your Mercury, they're eclipsing that whole the whole nature of what Mercury is doing in the nativity. And you asked here about the 12th house being seen by the second, the ninth house being averse to the second. To me, that doesn't matter. Mercury is responsible for both of the houses. Mercury is being eclipsed. Therefore, that comes into the eclipse story, those house topics. All right, this was a little technical, everybody. I hope you're following. Okay, here's some chart examples. Oh, actually, I wanted just to jump in here for you, Del. Here's what I'm interested in. 18 January 2022 to 17 July 2023 is a major defining beginning and end of this eclipse cycle. So if you're having second house eclipses and there's money stuff, I'm interested in this whole period of time for mapping that story as one major boundary of a period of time. So it's activated this whole time because the North Node's transiting through Taurus this whole time, and planets are triggering it. The moon triggers it, 4 times a month. And if we extend it out farther, you could go back to November 19th, 2021, when you saw that first eclipse in Taurus, and you could extend it until 28 October 2023, when you have the last eclipse on the Taurus-Scorpio axis. That's sort of the outer boundaries. There's eclipses still in that second house, that Taurus second house, even though the nodes have shifted. So to come back to your answer, like, yes, activations are present this whole time because eclipses aren't done and the lunar nodes then are transiting through that axis during the other first dates we looked at. But let's go to a chart example. Edgar Degas, a painter, Edgar Degas. His chart has eclipses in Taurus, right? So it's that whole period of dates that we just looked at as the beginning and ending of this Taurus story. 4th house for him, parents, family, home. Maybe he would be moving during these eclipses. Now he's passed on. It's just a chart example. Pretend like he's born in 2000. So, I would say this eclipse cycle, you're talking about moving, you're talking about parents and family. Mars is there. Maybe there's acrimony, but Mars rules the 3rd and the 10th. So we're also talking about siblings. Like, this feels like an eclipse cycle related to family and siblings for Degas. And that 3rd house is definitely in play as eclipses hit his Mars, or we would say co-present with his Mars. And then career, maybe his family and the home life at home is causing problems around his career. And so you have to move and break off relations in a way to kind of center the career and set new boundaries with family. That could all be the kind of fated beginnings and endings that come with eclipses. And so that is how I would delineate this. When would it be timed? Well, what do we have now? Everything's in Sagittarius now, but we just went through a whole eclipse cycle with a bunch of transiting stellium and Scorpio. The next time the fixed axis is activated is in January, when we have some little pileups in Aquarius, January 2023. So I would be interested in that period as the next activation of this eclipse cycle, because these transits will be conjoined the south bending of the moon, the moon's lowest point in terms of its path. And so it exports through hard aspect and kind of triggers and pings that eclipse story. So that's my answer for you, Del, and I hope that is sufficient and a good answer. Let's go to the next question. I got this on a DM from Twitter. Hi, I'm an Aquarium. I'm very depressed. I have not had any breakthroughs in life despite putting in hard work. When do you think good times will roll in? I'm over 50, struggling in life. My career is not taking off desired. I'm desperately looking for a breakthrough. Can you please help me with Aquarian prospects for the future? So with this question, the first thing I'm going to say, just because your sun is in a sign, that's actually not the best way to get into your astrology. You really need to have a whole chart with an ascendant degree, and then you can look at house topics. It's the best way to predict, because then you know what topics are governed by which planets and which planets are strong and weak, and then where the transits are happening. So that's my first answer here. This wouldn't be the way to get at this question of when you might have breakthroughs. Plus, when we have the whole chart, we can go back through cycles of transits and understand the ups and downs of the life up to this point, and then maybe better predict when ups may be coming. That said, I liked this question because I just wanted to speak to like the sign of Aquarius. That would include all Aquarius placements. We all have Aquarius in the chart. And what's going on with Aquarius? When might we see this sign get a little bit of freedom? And so I'm just going to offer this to you. Thanks for that question. We've lived through, this is the chart of the moment. We're living through Saturn in Aquarius. The domicile ruler of Aquarius has come home to Aquarius starting in March 2020. Saturn is a tough planet. It's of the nature of discipline, hard work, stripping things away, imprisonment, restriction, sadness, grief, loss, all of those things. And then it's also a planet of eminence. It's what we rebuild once the kind of Saturnine smackdown has come in. Then we're left with power and strength that we can build from. Saturn has been powerful since December 2017, and it's still powerful. These are the final months. So what I would say for Aquarius, if that's an important part of your chart, that's in terms of like career or money or prospects or success, 10th house, second house, it could be important, without getting into the specific types of charts where I think Aquarius is important. All of our charts have it. It's important for some facet of our life in all of our charts. But these final months of Saturn Aquarius, look for that so-called parting gift. We've worked through power Saturn, heavy Saturn, the discipline, the challenge, the destruction, the recreation. And we're now kind of putting the final touches on that Saturn and Aquarius story. So I would say from now until March 7th, when Saturn leaves Aquarius, look for clarity and kind of congealing of the so-called Saturn lessons. So that would be my first answer. I think you're in play. We're all in play for some upside with Aquarius because Saturn's finishing its time here. But then the next answer I want to give is that we just look to Saturn as the major planet that impacts Aquarius. How is Saturn doing at any time? And if Saturn is doing well, I think that the Aquarian prospects are doing well, And so look to next year. It's a major transit. It's my probably number one transit of next year. And that's the Saturn sextile Jupiter that happens in June, where Saturn is now in the kind of lighthearted Pisces, the sort of levity and the washing and cleansing of benefic Pisces. That alone in March, that transition, I think, brings some levity to Aquarius. But look here, domicile ruler, major ruler, Jupiter in Taurus, making this exact supportive sextile in June. Look for June to be a time when Aquarius, because that's what Saturn's responsible for, gets support from Saturn itself having this double benefic support. Look, Saturn will be in the Egyptian term. We'll travel through all of these terms, and it'll be in the single term here in June when it sextiles Jupiter, of Venus and domicile ruled by Jupiter, exaltation ruled by Jupiter. It's a lovely lightning and benefic turn for Saturn that I do think opens up some prospects for Aquarius. And the last thing I'll say is just keep at it. Saturn, the main lesson, and an Aquarian lesson is stay with things, keep trying, keep trying. It's never too late to have big breakthroughs. So I encourage you there, and good luck to you. Next question. This comes from Mary Hawker in my Sagittarius new moon video. She wanted me to adapt the message about the centaur, the power of the thighs to walk for those of us with disabilities. She's in a full-time wheelchair user and paralyzed from the waist down. And so I wanted to speak to you, Mary. Thank you for this question because it raises an amazingly important point, a highly important point. And that point is that, and I went back and listened to how I was presenting that information. And I think the key is that it's symbolic. So when we're talking about the idea of the centaur and what that might mean in our lives, really it's a symbolic representation of something deeper that actually is unrelated to, our literal thigh. Okay, that's the major point. And, I was using it more of the idea that in the centaur, which is a mythic creature, doesn't even exist in reality. In that model, there's a certain idea of galloping out with the self and the kind of spirit of the self. And that can be done no matter what our physical thighs are doing in reality. I mean, we can embody this notion of the Sagittarian. And often this will be things where we're not even walking at all, where we're just staying still. And I think your comment is a wonderful example of a Sagittarian kind of turn. I mean, you shared about your life, you shared with us, your story, you brought it into, this conversation. And that's exactly what I was talking about. So, the mechanism that propelled you or motivated you, that fire in you that was like, okay, I want to share this with SJ and get his opinion on it. That's Sagittarius. It's that fire sign, that inner passion of selfhood where we bring it into community. And so, in that case, the strong thigh is simply a metaphor for our inner fire, passion. And so that's the most important point. It was metaphorical. It's however we get out into the world. And often these days, it is the movement takes place through things like the keys on a computer, or the other ways that we interact. So that said, I also want to come back to, and here's the thing. This is this mythic creature. This is actually even it doesn't exist. And it's very important when we think about Zodiac symbolism, because when we think about it and apply it to human lives, we're talking about like principles more that the symbols evoke that then we can apply no matter our condition. We can kind of embody the principles, how we embody them within our context. Another example of this I just wanted to look at is Aquarius. This is a kind of a perfect example. A lot of times we talk about Aquarius as being like pouring out our truth. We're fixed now with how we want to be and kind of staying grounded and letting our truth kind of submerge around us in our environment. Very, very, almost never would we say that this means we need to pour water out around us. I mean, it's just not how this symbol would ever apply. it's very much the metaphor of like our truth and our wisdom and our knowledge being saturated in it and those around us and staying fixed, that fixed Aquarian, the innovations and the upgrades that we can deploy, and so it's just another example that we can kind of see the symbolic way that these symbols apply, and they can apply to whatever our context is. So this said, I really liked the comment of Croissant. She or they're also a wheelchair user, and the Sagittarius thyre relation, it can still apply. And I just want to say there still is a literal thing. I mean, maybe there's something with this Sag season where the thigh comes into importance. Maybe even though you're paralyzed, it's somehow going to be implicated with Sagittarius being active. I like to use, and this comes, and thank you, Croissant, for this context. I think it was very wise because, there is this side of medical astrology. It comes from this thing, Zodiac man, which goes all the way back into ancient texts, where these signs actually do point to the sectors. And it can be very, very literal, when we look at activation. Sometimes, like, you'll hear this a lot. People talk about Virgo season and their bowels, just the intestines get triggered. It's one of those Virgo archetypes of like the kind of weak stomach. So I would encourage you to just think about it too. Maybe there is something going on with your thighs, or anybody out there, whatever the condition of your thighs are, that could be something that's happening during the Sagittarius season or the Sagittarius activation. Anyhow, Mary, thanks for that question. And I just want to underscore again that it was very Sagittarian of you to share this about yourself. And thanks for adding that to the conversation. I really appreciate it. I'm going to push on to the final question. This comes from Tiffany Solbird over on Twitter. Hi, Tiffany. Thanks for the question. They're asking me here, I'm curious if you elect times to publish your content or to just go up whenever you're ready. And the short answer is the short answer of how I do it now, the more important the post, yes, the more likely that I will elect. If it's some kind of big announcement or like it's some huge thread that I put a lot of time in, I will definitely elect. I'd like that support to add to the efforts that I've made. I used to do more of electing times for every Twitter post. I used to do a lot more like scheduled posts on Twitter, and I would try to elect every day. The problem is it just takes a lot of work. To do elections is hard, and to make every post I post a lot, to have to filter that back through an election, just not something I do as much anymore, but I will always elect very important launches or posts. So that's my short answer to you. Often these days things just go up when I'm ready. There's a certain theory where we just kind of, if we're in tune with the energy, sometimes I'm just in tune. I mean, I'm very busy, and like right now, this is the pocket where I can record this video. I've had a really busy week. I couldn't get to this. I wanted to release it earlier, but I have to seize this moment now. And it's an Aquarius moon. That's a kind of a tougher moon. I'm going to release this right away. Maybe it was not the purely best election to have the moon in Aquarius, but this video, let me just say this final thought. For me, the regularity of posting is a more important factor than it is to make sure every post has this perfect electional astrology. Just keep it regular, and for the important stuff, do the elections. Thanks for the question, and good luck with your posting and everything like that. Okay, that is it. That's this Q&A video. I'm really glad that you're here. Thanks everybody for the questions. You can always ask me questions. I'll probably collect these and maybe do another Q&A at some point when I feel like there's enough questions that are interesting and that can add value. I'm going to release a December astrology video maybe tomorrow or the 30th. So look for that. That's coming soon. Excited to go into December. There's a lot of cool stuff coming. Capricorn activation, Venus and Mercury still traveling together. I think it's going to be a sweet little pocket of December, some of the best astrology we've had in a while. So take care. Great to see you. Peace. And I will talk to you all very, very soon. Bye.